My name is Karen. I'm a 30-year-old office worker, married for 2 years. My husband, Jack, is 5 years older and works for a major corporation. Jack has lived in the neighborhood since we were kids, and being an only child, he was like a big brother to me. However, once we started working, we moved away from our hometown and lost touch. 3 years ago, during a summer festival, we happened to meet again. After catching up, I realized my feelings for him had changed, and soon after, we started dating and quickly got married. Both our parents were overjoyed. But shortly after our wedding, Jack's company went bankrupt, and he was suddenly out of a job. I supported us financially, and Jack worked hard job hunting. Thankfully, he secured a position at his current company within 6 months, which was a relief. Moreover, he quickly made a name for himself at his new job and is now considered a rising star. However, Jack has become increasingly arrogant recently. He hands me cash for living expenses, so I don't know his total salary, but he must be earning quite a bit, given his extravagant lifestyle. He collects luxury watches he never wears and goes on trips under the guise of business trips. He's also often home late, so it's no surprise he doesn't do his share of the household chores. When I point out what he hasn't done, he tries to solve it with money. Cleanup? Oh, I forgot about that. But, since you're home more, you could just take care of it without making a fuss. I could even give you some extra spending money for it. I don't like his attitude, and it often leads to arguments. Pocket money? That's not the point. Then, Jack would either leave the house or lock himself in his room, making it impossible to have a discussion. I suspect he might be cheating, though I have no proof. We've moved to a nicer apartment, but my heart is growing colder. One day, while at work, I received a call. Your mom has collapsed. It was from my dad, and I rushed to the hospital. But I was too late. My mom had a chronic illness and had collapsed at home. By the time my dad found her, it was too late. In deep sorrow, my dad and I started preparing for the funeral. I tried calling Jack multiple times, but couldn't reach him. I finally got in touch with him at his usual time of returning home. I answered the call from Jack. Karen? Why aren't you at home? You've been calling me multiple times during work, what's going on? After returning home, Jack noticed I wasn't there and finally decided to give me a call. I'm sorry, Jack, my mom passed away. I managed to say, holding back tears. Yet, the response I received was completely unexpected. What? She died? Don't call me for something like that. It's annoying. I was stunned and couldn't hold back my tears any longer. Something like that? My mom passed away, and you call it something like that? I can't believe it. I'm staying at my parents' home tonight. The wake is tomorrow, and the funeral the day after. I'll be waiting for you here. I was a mix of sadness and frustration, barely able to convey the necessary details. So you're not coming home tonight? What about my dinner? If you're not going to be home, at least say so. Guess I'll go out for a drink or something. Jack's words just passed through me. When do you think you can come tomorrow? Somehow, I managed to squeeze out those words. Tomorrow? Oh, I can't make it tomorrow. I have an important meeting. And I can't get away the day after either. Not coming to the funeral? That's unacceptable. You can take bereavement leave, right? It's fine if you arrive by early afternoon tomorrow. It's inconceivable not to attend the funeral when your wife's mother has passed away. Despite my saying so, Jack brushes it off with a simple excuse of being busy. Eventually, I raised my voice. My mom has passed away. You've known her since you were a kid. You should at least come to say goodbye. My mom was a homemaker, and when Jack's working parents were busy, she would bring them meals. Our families have been close for years, despite there being no willingness to attend the funeral. After I raised my voice, Jack, seemingly annoyed, said, "Fine, I'll show up for a bit," and hung up the phone. The next day, many people gathered for the wake. Of course, Jack's parents were also there. Karen, isn't Jack here yet? My mother-in-law's question made me realize that Jack hadn't arrived yet. I had been so busy with preparations, I had assumed he was already there. The wake was about to start soon. When I called Jack, he answered unusually quickly. Jack? Are you still at work? What time can you make it? He responded irritably, I'm still at work. I can't make it today, and yelled. There was no point in arguing further. I gave up for today and informed him about the time for tomorrow's funeral before hanging up. Jack's parents repeatedly apologized to me and my father and kept calling Jack, but they couldn't get through to him. I truly believed he would show up for the funeral, but Jack was nowhere to be seen the next day. Moreover, when I called him, he said, you know my hourly rate is high. I could go, but can you afford to pay me? I had had enough. Always talking about money. No matter how much money one has or how good their life is, I can't be with someone whose heart is impoverished. I decided to get a divorce. During the funeral, a woman approached me. You're Karen, right? I was your mother's old classmate, and we just had tea together recently. She said so with tears in her eyes. Hearing this, I couldn't help but let my own tears fall. She continued, where's your husband? When I told her he was too busy with work to come, she quietly became angry. Too busy with work to come? That can't be true. I was confused by her words, but she explained. I'm an executive at Jack's company. When he first joined, I heard about this amazing new guy, and when I talked to him, I realized he was your husband. But recently, he seems to have started slacking off at work. There was a complaint from a client just yesterday. She said. I was surprised by her story, but maybe the reason Jack yelled at me on the phone yesterday was that he was in a bad mood from that complaint. I wanted to hear more, but the woman, considerate of my situation, didn't linger and left. That night, I went back home once to pack what I needed. Jack hadn't returned yet and wasn't answering his phone. I left a note saying I'd be at my parents' home for a while and left the house. The next day, the executive woman contacted me. Apparently, Jack had applied for bereavement leave and was off work that day too. But when I told her he hadn't shown up at the funeral, she murmured, I thought so. And told me everything. Finally, she said, I think he'll be terminated immediately. The next time he comes to the office, his desk won't be there. Jack contacted me the following night. When are you coming back? Although he said it in a displeased tone, I felt nothing. I had no feelings left for this man. I'll come to pick up my things soon, I replied. Huh? I won't be coming back. What's that supposed to mean? Jack scoffed at me. Let's get a divorce. When I said that firmly, Jack scoffed. Divorce? Why would you suddenly bring that up? Not showing up at your wife's mother's funeral is insane. I can't live with you anymore. Ah, right. Do as you please. It's you, Karen, who won't be able to live without me. You will be home tomorrow since it's Saturday, right? I'm coming to get my things, and I'll bring the divorce papers. Make sure you're there. I had everything prepared and was ready. The next day, I headed to the house with the divorce papers in hand. Upon opening the door, I found Jack sleeping on the sofa. Empty beer cans were scattered on the table. Then, I sensed something was off. As I glanced towards the bathroom, a woman emerged from it. Huh? As I involuntarily muttered, she noticed me and made a sound. This awoke Jack abruptly. What are you doing here? Jack was flustered, his mouth agape as he looked at me. Didn't I say I was coming today to get my things? And that I'd bring the divorce papers? The woman who came out of the bathroom stood frozen for a moment but, sensing the situation, sneaked out of the door without me noticing. Well, I knew who she was. Her presence didn't matter to me now. Jack then stammered, trying to make excuses like, that's not what it looks like, she's a junior from work, we just went out for drinks yesterday. But I wasn't listening. What matters now is not that. Here are the documents for the division of assets. And these are the divorce papers. I don't want to waste time. So please check and sign them quickly. As he looked over the property division documents, Jack seemed almost triumphant. Property division, huh? Well, can't be helped. You'll need money to live on your own from now on. Fine, I'll give you this much. Then he signed the divorce papers and handed them to me. We're strangers now. Annoyed by his demeanor, I snatched the divorce papers and stormed out of the door. Later, I submitted the divorce papers to the court, and we were officially strangers. Yet, a few days later, Jack showed up at my parents' home. Karen. What's the meaning of this? It arrived then. Jack was holding a demand for alimony. It was something I had my lawyer, David, file for. Alimony? What's this about? It's written there, isn't it? Compensation for emotional abuse and infidelity. Jack had increasingly pushed household chores onto me, shouted at me, and such behavior had become more frequent. Unable to objectively assess the situation, I had started recording our daily interactions on my phone's voice recorder to understand things calmly. I never thought it would be useful, but when David heard it, he said it was emotional abuse and advised me to claim compensation. And then there was the compensation for infidelity. Jack, you've been coming home late recently, and something seemed off. Turns out, you were cheating. I wanted to believe it wasn't like you. I said calmly, and Jack retorted. No, that's not it, I wasn't cheating. That person the other day? We all went out for drinks, and she just missed her last train. So I brought her home. Nothing happened, it's a misunderstanding. Jack adamantly denied it. Why do you think I overlooked that woman fleeing that day? Because I had other evidence. I knew she was a junior from your company. Taking bereavement leave to go on a cheating trip is not okay. Did you think you wouldn't get caught? Besides, you've been fired from your company. Haven't you? I know everything. Jack looked at me, eyes wide. I continued, laughing. You, who boasted about being a rising star, wouldn't admit to being fired, would you? Fired, along with your affair partner, no less. Just because she's in accounting, you thought you could embezzle company funds without getting caught? How did you? He hadn't expected me to find out. Jack turned pale, his mouth opening and closing in shock. The woman who came to my mother's funeral was an executive from your company. She said she was a classmate of my mother's. She was quite upset that you didn't attend the funeral and thought about giving you a piece of her mind when she returned to the office. Then she realized you were on bereavement leave. She contacted me. The overnight trip to the spa must have been enjoyable, huh? With that, I presented the evidence photos I had kept. What, this? Jack's face grew paler by the second. Detectives are amazing, aren't they? I never imagined they could gather so much evidence. After hearing from the executive woman, my intuition kicked in. Seeing the note I left about my absence, Jack would surely go out somewhere. If my hunch was correct, it would be for an affair. When I consulted with the executive woman, she referred me to a lawyer and a detective. I had heard that hiring a detective could be expensive, but I was certain something would happen in the next few days. It made sense to hire one just for the day, and if I could claim alimony, the detective's fees would be offset. The day of the funeral, upon finding out I wouldn't be returning home, Jack left the next day for a trip with his affair partner. Must have been a fun affair trip, not knowing a detective was tailing you or that you'd been fired during your holiday. It's rare to be fired while on leave. Must have been a shock to come to work and find no place for you, I said. Finally, Jack spoke up. So, this was all you're doing? Hearing that made me laugh again. What are you accusing me of? The misuse of leave and embezzlement were all you're doing, weren't they? I concluded firmly. Just because you're unemployed now doesn't mean you can skip out on the alimony. There's also the division of assets. You can sell your pointless collection of watches to pay it off. Make sure you pay up quickly. With that, I slammed the front door shut. When the executive woman contacted me, her saying I thought so was due to suspicious activities in the company's finances. And it appeared that the affair partner, who worked in accounting, was suspected. Furthermore, rumors of her affair with Jack had reached her ears, so she thoroughly investigated and discovered they were indeed embezzling funds. They must have been enjoying their affair with that money. Both were terminated immediately. Later, Jack paid the alimony in a lump sum. I have no contact with him now, nor do I care what he's doing. Despite how things turned out, I'm grateful for this outcome. Without this incident, I might never have considered leaving Jack, who had changed so much, and would have continued to suffer. Maybe this was the last lesson my mother taught me. I'm okay, now. Now, I'm living healthily, making sure to be dutiful to my father.